Welcome to the Intern Club, where we talk about how to land a paid internship during college. Today, we have a couple topics on tap. So, Mike, would you like to kick it off for us?
Yeah, the first question we're going to talk about is what are career fairs?
Career fairs. That is a great question. Career fairs, in this specific context, we're talking about on campus career fairs, where basically companies show up to your school and talk to students from your school. Basically, the general idea is you could think of a bunch of companies showing up on campus with basically maybe two or three people from each company standing at maybe a table or like a booth for that's designated to that company, and then students can walk around from sort of table to table to talk to different companies.
Now, a lot of things like the feedback that we get from students is what what do I do when recruiters say apply online? Because a lot of students wait in line for a long period of time and then they go to talk to the recruiter, share about their experiences, say they're looking for an internship, and the recruiter just goes, "Okay, thanks for letting us know. You can go ahead and apply online." What would you recommend to a student when a recruiter says apply online or to navigate that situation of somebody saying apply online?
I think there's a couple different things. I think the first thing, which is proactive, would be applying online before the career fair. So then when you go in and they say apply online, you just have already applied. But then the
The
next thing would be if you don't, and the other part of being proactive is maybe going online and finding specific positions that interest you.
Basically, the point is when they say apply online, you want to move the ball forward. And a lot of
And
students will just be like, "Oh, okay," and then leave. And a lot of students when they get told apply online will just be like, "Okay, sure," and then leave and have the job link. But if you apply online beforehand, it's almost like anticipating your opponent's next move in chess, where you can go to a career fair anticipating that you'll be told to go apply online. So if you apply online before the fair, you're already showing that you're a very motivated candidate to get the job.
And so I think, though, also part of the thing is applying online is part of what you do here during the career fair. And in some cases, though, companies are actually hosting either interviews like that day or that the rest of that week on campus. So a company might be at a fair and then literally have a room reserved on campus for the entire following day to interview students, and they may sign up students on the spot at the fair, or they have plans to basically earmark your resume and then call you back after the fair and start that whole interview process a week later or something. And so something that you can do proactively too to sort of get out of that response is just be the best that you can be and put your best foot forward at the fair so that they actually do want to extend you one of those invitations to interview you.
So how does a student do that? How do they put themselves in the best position to succeed at career fairs?
So there's a couple different things. I think the first would be your elevator pitch, knowing what to talk about to how to talk about yourself, what you're going to talk about when you introduce yourself. What does that 30 to 60-second introduction look like? And then also the basics too, in terms of verbal and nonverbal communication, making sure that your verbal communication is really good. You're succinct, you're good at describing your experiences. And then the nonverbal communication, are you staring off into space? Are you, when you're in line waiting to talk to the company, are you laughing with friends, joking around, causing a ruckus? Are you, yeah.
Or on the positive side of nonverbal communication, are you walking up to the career fair booth, talking to a recruiter, offering a handshake? Are you smiling? Are you maintaining eye contact during that conversation? Those are some examples of positive nonverbal communication cues.
And I think also with like the actual content of what you talk about during the interview, or not during the interview, during the conversation, it's important that you take the time to think what on my resume is maybe most tailored to this company. That's part of what comes from doing research beforehand too. That's another way you can set yourself up for success. Is if you just research the company beforehand. You don't just want to go into what do you do? You want to know a little bit about these companies beforehand, what products, services, how they make money. You want to know maybe their location, potentially what types of roles they're hiring for. And that also goes into just research the open jobs at that company beforehand. So then you kind of get an idea of what's available, what they might do. And you can figure out what experience of yours that you have may already already relate to the type of work that that company does.
And once you know what that experience is, or once you've identified that target experience that you want to share, one of the things that I would like to do at career fairs is actually when I hand my resume over, not just hand my resume over to the recruiter and let them take what they want out of the resume, but actually point out relevant experiences on my resume. Kind of directing the recruiter, because this is a recruiter who hasn't seen my experiences at all before and is really unfamiliar with my background and what I've done. And if I know about the company, if I know about roles that I'm interested in or what skills or experiences I want to identify, I'll actually point that out to the recruiter. As I'm walking through my elevator pitch, I'm saying, here's a little bit more about my experiences. And I'll say, reference, my specific experience, and you can find it here on the page and point it out on the page so that the recruiter, I kind of am telling the recruiter where to look. Because we know recruiters don't spend a ton of time reviewing every single word on the resume. And so if I'm there in person, I'm taking advantage of that in-person connection to actually point out, like, here is where I want you to look because this is what I view as my most relevant experience. If they flag other experiences, that's great. It's even more relevant experiences, but I definitely want to come in with a game plan and kind of walk the recruiter through the experiences that I think are going to be most relevant and impactful.
And I think another sort of advanced strategy with those career fairs is that when you're talking to these employers, you're going to tend to get responses on certain topics. You're going to get questions about certain topics more than maybe other topics on your resume. And so you can use that as feedback to maybe improve your elevator pitch. So if you feel like every other company you talk to is really interested in a specific item on your resume, but that's not part of your elevator pitch, maybe that's a little bit of a signal to start tying that into your elevator pitch so you can then already introduce that information like right off the bat, because if they keep asking about it, there's potentially a lot of interest in that experience.
Yeah, one of that actually is a good segue into our second question that we wanted to cover. So we first talked about what are career fairs, and we gave some advice on how to be successful at career fairs. Another question that I wanted to talk about with you today, Matt, was how do you structure an elevator pitch?
The elevator pitch structure that I like to share is relatively straightforward. You first introduce yourself in the current, and then you talk a little bit about your past experiences and then what you're interested in doing in the future. So current is as simple as what you study, maybe what you're involved in on campus, what your interests are, something like that. And then the past is maybe the most relevant past experiences that you have. And tying it up in the future is, what are you looking for? Are you looking for an internship, a co-op position, maybe what type of industry or type of work that interests you? Something that's more forward-looking. So you start from the current just to really quickly get to who you are. Then a little bit about your past, this more convincing information. Maybe you could talk about a project or like your involvement in a club on campus. And then you'd go into, okay, what does my future look like?
I think we can break that into like three key questions. The first one, who are you? The second one, why should that recruiter care? And the third one is, what do you want? Right.
I think that sounds about right. And then you just, for each of those, you can 3 sentences each. Maybe not if you were to assume, I think the actual structure would be a little different, but then you're at 9 sentences. That could take, all of a sudden, that's your 30 to 60 seconds.
Exactly. Very simple. And I think what you want to do at the very end of what you're looking for is transition into a conversation.
I think that's important too. The faster that you can, one key is a lot of students get nervous. So the faster that you can transition the interaction to a conversation rather than something that feels more interviewish, the better it will be for you. Because in a conversation, it's just a lot easier to interact and talk with the recruiter.
Yeah, and there's a lot more flow. And what you want is flow and positive experiences so that when the recruiter walks away from the event, maybe they've spoken to 10, 50, hundreds of students at career fairs. You want them to be remembering your conversation.
And you also should maybe think too of it as a little bit of a test, like from the recruiter's perspective, is this somebody I would enjoy working with, talking to on a daily basis at work? And so that's one thing you can keep in the back of your mind, just trying to be that type of person. You want to be the type of person that other people would want to work with. So don't go up and be too too much in either extreme of, how whatever scale you may be looking at. Just be yourself and try to think about being somebody that other people would enjoy being around.
Because I think there's a lot of pressure to land internships, and in that pressure, what's overlooked is of the student evaluating companies. A lot of the time, the internship search is so focused on students being evaluated by companies, not on the other end of students evaluating companies to see if that company and that company's culture is a good fit for them.
And I think there's a lot of ways that students can also evaluate companies. There's You can ask questions about what the company does, the type of work. There's plenty of questions you can ask. For example, what like I just said, what does that you can ask questions about more about what the company does or how they operate, where they operate, things like that.
Yeah, and I think what the company does, but how they operate is a big thing because it gets you an understanding of what the company values, right? Whether there's regular recurring meetings on certain days of the week or what the type of mentorship is like within that company. Understanding what happens and the social interactions and the structure could be very helpful to understand about companies. I think maybe we have another question that we want to dive into today. This is the third question, third primary question, which is how to be successful in landing an internship this year. Maybe we can look at like 5 different tips for being successful in landing an internship.
I think tip number one would be making sure that you have a good resume. I think there's plenty of students out there who think their resume is like top notch, really good, but still have lots of room for improvement. And that students will overlook that and try to figure out other tricks or hacks when it really goes back to the resume. So I would say every single student should realistically take another look at their resume.
So we know having a good resume is really important. Matt, what are 2 things that you would say are important for having a really good internship resume?
Number one, I would say making sure that your resume is 1 page long. And then number two, I would make sure that you take the time to write out decent descriptions of each of the experiences that you have. But you don't want to get either, too technical, but you don't want to be too brief. Finding that sweet spot in the description of your experiences.
And one of the things that you and I like to say is having your resume 1 page long, but also one line. The bullet points under your experience is 1 line long.
Yes.
For everybody who was applying for college applications, sometimes college applications or maybe scholarship applications are limited in the character count. And some, opinions that I've heard on that was to make sure the writing is very thoughtful because it's very challenging to write responses with, a 250 word limit or a 500 word limit when rather than writing a response that's 1,000 words or 2,000 words, because you don't have to think about carefully curating the words so that every sentence is impactful. And that's one of the reasons why I like limiting bullet points on my resume to just 1 line as best as I can, because it challenges me to rethink each bullet point to say, what is the very most important thing that I want to communicate in a way that somebody who's very unfamiliar with my experiences can easily understand?
I 100% agree. And I think tip number three, so we have the two resume tips. And tip number three, I would give towards taking advantage of different ways to get an internship. You can get an internship in our experience through on-campus career fairs, networking, and applying online. And so don't ignore any of those during the internship search. Definitely be trying to take advantage of all of those.
It's almost like a business selling a product, that a lot of the time there's multiple ways to get a product. So I think we've talked about this before. It's like your favorite protein bar or your favorite snack. There might be multiple ways to get the snack, whether it's online, in person, at various different stores. Usually our favorite foods or favorite kind of items, there's multiple ways for us to get them. And in the same way, you want to kind of find multiple ways to get an internship because you never know which channel is going to be yielding you an internship, potentially yielding you an internship offer. I think another thing too, we talked about the resume. We talked about the 2 resume tips. We also talked about applying online, career fairs, and networking to get an internship. One of the things we didn't talk about was actually building skills and experiences to position yourself as a highly qualified candidate.
I think taking the time to evaluate your resume and figure out what maybe gaps you have can be really important. So just figuring what's going to maybe take me from where I am today to being a little more qualified for the next in a month from now, 2 months from now.
And one of the things that I like to do for that is working backwards, right? So to figure out what my dream position is or what my goal position is or target position, what types of skills and experiences do I need for that versus what types of skills and experiences do I have currently? Where are the gaps? So what skills and experiences am I lacking or do I need to get? And then I work out a plan in order to get them, right? And there
Yep.
could be multiple ways of getting it, whether it's free online certifications, personal projects, internship experiences, student organization experiences. You can kind of figure out ways to get those skills and experiences that you need for your target position.
And I think number 5 piece of advice I would give is don't limit yourself by different factors such as maybe company size or company industry or geographic location. Because when you start limiting yourself by those different things, you start to really close off a lot of opportunities. And there's a ton of good opportunities in any combination of those. And you really don't know which one's going to be right. There's millions that you can explore. And the right one for you, you never really know. But the more you limit yourself like that, the less you're going to find out and learn.
And I think we talk about this too as the idea of a compounding effect or a snowball effect. That it's difficult to land the first internship, but once you land your first internship, that could be helpful. Is having an internship experience under your belt can help you get more internship experiences. And as you acquire more internship experiences, the snowball effect keeps building up
Absolutely.
and it's more and more and more helpful towards acquiring internship experiences.
Yes, that is absolutely true. Generally speaking, the second one's easier to get to first, and then the third's easier to get than the second. And it just becomes easier and easier. And so that is it for the Intern Club. Thank you for listening in on this episode. If you're interested in getting our one-on-one coaching, definitely check out the description for our one-on-one coaching application and comment any questions that you have about internships that you would like us to talk about.